In the middle of a bustling, crowded high school in Manila, a student named Andre Torres sits quietly in the back row, blending into the sea of average teenagers. To everyone around him, he's just another awkward, unremarkable student who rarely speaks up. But beneath the surface, Andre carries a secret no one could ever guess. He is, in fact, the highest IQ holder in the country, something so extraordinary that he's forced to mask it, hiding his genius behind a facade of mediocrity. His classmates have no idea that behind his studious eyes is the mind of a prodigy capable of solving the most complex problems in seconds. But Andre's true battle isn't against the limits of his intellect. It's against his deep, consuming crush on the class president, Lisa Santos. Lisa is the complete opposite of Andre. Confident, popular, and admired by everyone, she seems light years away from someone like him. Yet Andre can't help but watch her from afar, yearning for a connection that feels impossible. Every time she walks into the room, his heart races, but he stays quiet. It's not just that she's out of his league. He knows there's no way she could ever see him as anything more than an invisible face in the crowd. But as the days go on, Andre's internal struggle grows. He knows that his brilliance hidden behind his mask could be the key to winning Lisa's attention. But how can he make her notice him without exposing his true self? And as his feelings for her intensify, Andre finds himself facing a crossroads. Will he continue to pretend to be average, or will he risk everything to reveal who he really is? Andre Torres wasn't the type of student to draw attention. In fact, he made it his mission to stay as far away from it as possible. Despite being the brightest mind in the country, someone who could solve the most complex equations in seconds, he deliberately played the role of the underachiever. While others soared in their academic pursuits, Andre stumbled through assignments, deliberately sabotaging his own work. He'd leave questions half-answered, or scribble illegible answers, all in an effort to mask his true capabilities. The average grades, the careless attitude, the lack of participation, it was all an act, a carefully crafted performance to ensure that no one, especially Lisa Santos, would ever suspect the genius he hid behind a mask of mediocrity every time. The teacher called on him in class. Andre would feign ignorance, stammering out answers that were far beneath his potential. It wasn't that he didn't care about his education, it was that his education had become irrelevant. What mattered now was Lisa, and to get her attention, he needed to remain invisible, anonymous even. The more he blended in, the less likely anyone would connect him to the academic prodigy that lurked beneath the surface. He watched her from the back of the classroom, his eyes tracing the graceful way she moved, the way her laughter seemed to light up the room. She was everything he wasn't, confident, popular, and out of his league. But Andre wasn't just content with his distance. Every day, as he sat in the shadows, he studied Lisa, memorizing the way she interacted with her classmates, the way her smile brightened her face, how she spoke with such ease, commanding attention without effort. His feelings for her were intense, almost obsessive, but they also made him feel powerless. She didn't know he existed, not really. To her, Andre was just another quiet, invisible student, and he planned to keep it that way. Yet, as the days passed, Andre found himself caught between two conflicting desires. On one hand, he wanted desperately to impress her, to show her who he truly was, but on the other, he feared the consequences of revealing his genius. The risk was too great. If anyone found out who he really was, it would only complicate things. Lisa would never look at him the same way again. The students would treat him differently, and the attention he so carefully avoided would be thrust upon him. Andre was trapped in a vicious cycle. His desire to be noticed clashed with his need to stay hidden. Each time he failed an exam on purpose, a part of him felt a pang of guilt. His parents, who were proud of his academic achievements, had no idea about the farce he was living. They expected excellence, and when he brought home average grades, they questioned him, their disappointment cutting deeper with every passing test. But none of it mattered in the face of Lisa's indifference. He could endure their confusion, their frustration, as long as it meant staying in the shadows. And then there were the moments when he caught Lisa's eye, those fleeting seconds when she looked his way, when their gazes met for the briefest instant. Andre's heart would race, but he would quickly look away, pretending he hadn't noticed. He'd always made sure to avoid speaking to her, keeping his distance as much as possible. Lisa had her own life, her own group of friends, her own interests. She was busy with student government, charity events and social gatherings. She was out of his reach, and Andre was determined to keep it that way. But the longer he remained in the background, the more the tension built. The more he watched her, the more his longing grew. He wanted so much more than just a passing glance. He wanted her to know him, to see the real him, not the facade he had built. But to do that, he would have to risk everything. He would have to step out from behind the curtain and expose himself as someone entirely different from the quiet, average student everyone thought he was. Each day, Andre found himself standing at the edge of a precipice, the weight of his deception growing heavier. He had managed to stay hidden, but for how much longer could he keep up the charade? And what would happen if just once he decided to stop pretending and let his true self shine? Could he still keep Lisa at a distance while showing her who he really was? Or would everything unravel, leaving him exposed and vulnerable? The announcement echoed through the school's intercom, sending waves of excitement through every corner of the campus. It was a challenge, a nationwide quiz show competition to represent their school. The moment the principal's voice faded out, whispers filled the hallways. Everyone knew who the natural leader of the team would be. Lisa Santos, the class president, the embodiment of confidence, intelligence, and grace. She was the obvious choice to take the helm. Yet, as Lisa stood at the front of the classroom, listening intently to the details of the competition, Andre Torres sat at the back, unseen by most. His classmates hardly noticed him, the quiet, unassuming student who had earned the reputation of the king of failure. His lackluster grades, his deliberate underperformance in every class, everything about him screamed mediocrity. But to Andre, being average was his greatest disguise. As the discussions unfolded about who should be part of the quiz team, Andre's best friend Marcus leaned in and whispered, "You should totally go for it. Secretly outperform them all. No one will expect it. Prove them wrong." Andre stared at his friend, the words sinking in slowly. A challenge, a game he could win, yet no one would know it was him. No one would ever suspect him of being anything more than a failure, a guy who stumbled through tests and hid behind bad grades. But what if he could show them something different? What if he could reveal just how much he was hiding behind the mask of mediocrity? The thought alone stirred something deep within him, a chance to prove himself without the risk of exposure. And what better way to impress Lisa, the one person he couldn't help but admire from afar? He looked at Lisa now, focused and poised as usual, preparing to lead the team. She was everything he wasn't, confident, sure of herself, always in control. But in that moment, Andre saw her as more than just the class president. He saw someone who had the power to change everything for him, to pull him out of the shadows he had so carefully constructed around himself. If only she could see him for what he really was. If only she could notice him. "All right, I'll do it," Andre finally muttered, a sense of determination creeping into his voice. Marcus grinned widely. "This is going to be good. Just don't get caught, okay? You have nothing to lose, except your reputation." And so, the plan was set into motion. Andre would compete, secretly. No one would know it was him, not even Lisa. He would outperform everyone else and secure a perfect score on the quiz, all while maintaining his act of the unremarkable, average student. The day of the quiz show arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable. The entire class gathered in the auditorium, eagerly waiting for the first round to begin. Lisa stood confidently at the front, ready to lead the team. But the moment Andre entered the room, he was met with the usual indifference. No one cared to notice him. He was just another face in the crowd. As the quiz began, Andre's heart raced. The questions started, each one more challenging than the last. His classmates struggled, fumbling for answers, while Lisa stood at the podium, calmly directing the team. But Andre wasn't interested in what they were doing. His eyes were on the quiz papers, his mind racing through each problem as he mentally calculated the answers. The first round went by in a blur. His classmates were losing ground, and Lisa, ever the composed leader, tried to keep her cool. But it was obvious. Andre's peers were failing, and then the unthinkable happened. He raised his hand, signaling he was ready to answer. The teacher nodded, handing him the microphone. "Who knows the answer to question 5? The teacher asked. Andre spoke clearly, confidently, rattling off the answer with ease, each word carrying the weight of a mind far beyond the reach of his classmates. His classmates were stunned. Lisa, looking over at him in disbelief, had no idea that the quiet boy she barely acknowledged had just provided the perfect answer. The quiz continued, but with every round, Andre's brilliance became more undeniable. His classmates were now staring at him, struggling to understand how someone they had long dismissed as the king of failure could be so accurate, so brilliant. Lisa's expression shifted from confusion to awe as Andre answered question after question with perfect precision. By the end of the quiz, Andre had secured a perfect score, leaving the rest of the class in shock. Lisa's eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, Andre felt the weight of her gaze. He had done it. He had shown them all who he truly was, but in the process, he had also revealed something to himself. Behind the mask of mediocrity, there was a brilliance he had kept hidden for so long, a brilliance that just for a moment had allowed him to step out of the shadows and into the light. But as the applause echoed in the room, Andre couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. Lisa had noticed him, but at what cost? Would she still see him as the same person, or would she only see the genius behind the facade he had worked so hard to keep intact? And as the applause died down, Lisa's eyes met his again, this time with something more than curiosity. Was it admiration, or was it something more? It didn't take long for the news of Andre's sudden and flawless performance on the quiz to spread throughout the school. Whispers and hushed conversations erupted in the hallways the moment the competition ended. His name was on everyone's lips, his perfect score, a feat no one could deny. It wasn't just the students who were talking, even the teachers were impressed, questioning how someone they had overlooked could suddenly shine so brightly. But while some admired Andre's hidden brilliance, others began to form their own conclusions. The rumor mill started turning, and it turned fast. Lisa, who had been silently impressed by Andre's unexpected brilliance, found herself questioning the strange turn of events. The whispers reached her ears during lunch, first from her closest friends, then from others in the cafeteria. At first it seemed harmless, just idle chatter, but as more students added their voices to the growing buzz, the narrative shifted. Andre wasn't just brilliant. No, he was a cheater, a fraud who had somehow tricked the system. "Did you hear?" one of the popular girls whispered as she leaned toward Lisa. "They say Andre must have cheated. No way he could have pulled off that score without help." Lisa's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? He answered every question perfectly." "Don't know," the girl replied, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Some of the guys say he's been acting weird, like he's been trying to impress you. Maybe he's doing this for attention." The rumors continued to grow, each more exaggerated than the last. Some claimed Andre had hacked the quiz system. Others suggested he had been feeding answers to Lisa, trying to get closer to her. His brilliant performance on the quiz, once seen as a hidden talent, was now viewed as a calculated move to gain favor with the class president. Andre, the quiet, unnoticed student, was suddenly the subject of gossip, and not the kind that made him feel proud. Lisa wasn't sure what to believe. She had seen Andre's brilliance firsthand, but she couldn't ignore the rumors that were starting to cloud her judgment. She'd always thought of him as the guy who sat in the back of the classroom, the one who never said much and rarely stood out. She had no idea he was capable of something like this. Still, a part of her, deep down, wondered if there was any truth to the accusations. Was it all just too perfect? Andre had never tried to impress anyone before, let alone her. So why? Now, the tension of the rumors began to weigh on Andre. He could feel the eyes on him, the whispers behind his back. Every time he walked through the hallways, he was confronted with curious stares and sideways glances, the very thing he had worked so hard to avoid. Attention was now unavoidable. It was no longer about hiding his genius. It was about surviving the consequences of having revealed it. He felt trapped in a world that wasn't ready for the truth about who he was. The hardest part was Lisa, the one person he had hoped to impress. The one person whose opinion mattered to him more than anyone else was now part of the crowd that questioned him. Lisa had always been so confident, so sure of herself. Andre had admired her from afar, but now he wondered if he had miscalculated everything. Was she looking at him differently? Was she beginning to believe the rumors he couldn't shake? The thought that she might think he was just another guy trying to get her attention, just another desperate student hiding behind a mask of brilliance. It was on one particularly tense afternoon that Andre found himself alone in the school courtyard. He had avoided everyone all day, walking through the halls with his head down, trying to keep a low profile. But as he sat on a bench trying to clear his mind, Lisa appeared, walking toward him with an air of uncertainty. Her eyes met his, and for a moment it felt as though the whole world had paused. "Andre," she said quietly, her voice carrying a mix of curiosity and something else he couldn't quite place. "I've been hearing some things about you." He swallowed, his throat dry. "I'm sure you have," he said, trying to mask the tension in his voice. Lisa stood in front of him, her expression conflicted. "I don't know what to think," she admitted, her gaze flickering to the ground before meeting his eyes again. "I know you scored perfectly on the quiz, and that's impressive, but..." "But?" Andre asked, the word coming out before he could stop himself. "But people are saying things," she continued, hesitating before sitting down beside him. "I mean, I've heard some people think you cheated, that you were trying to get my attention, and that maybe..." She paused, looking at him, searching for answers. "Maybe you were trying to show off." Andre's heart raced. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to deny it, to explain himself, but he couldn't find the words. For once, he was speechless. "I didn't cheat," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to prove something, not to anyone else, just to myself." Lisa's gaze softened. "Then why didn't you just show everyone what you were capable of from the start?" Andre took a deep breath, his emotions swirling. "Because I didn't want to be noticed. I didn't want to be the guy everyone looks at. But now," he trailed off, looking at the ground. "Now I don't know how to fix it." Lisa was silent for a moment, then she sighed, her voice gentle. "People talk, Andre. They always will. But if you want to prove who you are, you can't let their words control you." Andre nodded, the weight of her words settling on him. For the first time in days, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he could rise above the rumors. Maybe he could stop hiding. But as Lisa stood and walked away, Andre couldn't shake the feeling that even if he cleared his name, the battle for his true self was far from over. The rumors about Andre had spread like wildfire, each whisper feeding the flames of doubt that now engulfed him. At first, he'd tried to ignore the gossip, dismissing it as meaningless chatter. But as the days passed, the weight of the rumors became unbearable. They seeped into every corner of the school. His classmates, his teachers, even Lisa, the one person he had secretly hoped would see him for who he truly was. The accusations of cheating, of trying to get her attention, had painted him as nothing more than a desperate, deceitful student. Andre's heart ached as he watched Lisa from a distance, trying to catch her gaze, but she seemed more distant with each passing day. Lisa had always been kind to him, but now, every time their eyes met, there was a fleeting hesitation, a momentary look of confusion, maybe even disappointment. She was no longer the confident, approachable girl he had admired from afar. Now, She was the source of his torment, and Andrei couldn't help but wonder if the rumors had already convinced her of his guilt. The thought gnawed at him, suffocating him with the growing realization that the one person he had wanted to impress might now see him as nothing more than a fraud. One afternoon, as Andrei walked through the hallway, he overheard a group of students whispering about him. One of them, a popular jock named Kyle, was laughing loudly, his voice cutting through the murmur of the hallway. "Did you hear what Andrei did? He totally hacked the quiz system. No way he's that smart," Kyle sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. And to think he was pretending to be dumb just to get Lisa's attention. Pathetic. Andrei's heart clenched in his chest. He had heard these rumors before, but this time the words hit him like a punch to the gut. His hands balled into fists, and before he knew it, he was moving toward the group of students, his feet carrying him forward in a rush of frustration and anger. The whispers stopped as soon as he approached, all eyes on him as he stood in front of Kyle. "Enough," Andrei said, his voice steady but filled with an emotion he hadn't meant to reveal. "Stop spreading lies about me." Kyle raised an eyebrow, smirking. "What? You're not going to cry about it, are you?" Andrei's jaw tightened, and without thinking he spoke again, his voice louder now, echoing through the hallway. "I didn't cheat. I didn't need to. I've been hiding my abilities because I didn't want to be the center of attention. But if you want the truth, here it is." The hallway was silent, the tension palpable. Andrei's chest heaved with the weight of his own words. He hadn't planned to reveal this part of himself, not like this, but the frustration had built up too much. He could feel the eyes of his classmates on him, the pressure mounting. "I've been pretending to be just like everyone else," Andrei continued, his voice trembling with emotion. "I've been pretending to be average because I didn't want to be noticed. I didn't want to be the guy everyone looked at. Like I was different, but I guess you all had to make me out to be a cheater instead." Kyle snorted, shaking his head. "Yeah, right. Nice try, dude. You can't fool me." Andrei's hands clenched again, but he forced himself to take a deep breath. He could feel the eyes of his peers on him, some filled with doubt, others with curiosity. It was the moment he had dreaded, the moment when everything would come crashing down, but it was also the moment that would define who he truly was. "I didn't do it for attention," Andrei said, his voice softening. "I did it for her." He felt a knot tighten in his throat, but he pressed on, his gaze shifting to Lisa, who had entered the hallway and was standing at the edge of the crowd. She had been watching, her eyes wide with confusion, and something else that Andrei couldn't quite place. "I've been trying to get your attention, Lisa. I've liked you for a long time," he confessed, his heart pounding in his chest. "But I didn't want to be the guy who just showed off his smarts. I thought if I could just be normal, you might notice me. But I guess it didn't work. And now, all of this, it's just a mess." There was a long pause. The weight of Andrei's words hung heavily in the air. He had revealed his secret, his feelings for Lisa, his hidden intellect, everything he had worked so hard to keep buried. But as he looked into Lisa's eyes, he saw nothing but distance. "I'm sorry, Andrei," Lisa said quietly, her voice tinged with regret. "I didn't know you felt that way, but the way you went about it, hiding yourself, pretending to be someone you're not. I don't know if I can respect that." Andrei's heart sank as her words pierced through him. The rejection was more painful than he had imagined. The girl he had hoped would see him, not as a failure, but as someone worthy of admiration, was now turning away from him. "I didn't mean to lie to you," Andrei whispered, his voice barely audible. "I just didn't know how else to be." Lisa took a step back, her eyes softening for just a moment, but the distance between them remained. "I think you need to find out who you really are, Andrei. Not for me, not for anyone else, just for you." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving Andrei standing alone in the hallway, his world unraveling around him. As the echoes of Lisa's footsteps faded, Andrei was left with the crushing weight of his own choices. He had revealed his feelings, his intelligence, but in doing so, he had lost her. And now he had to live with the consequences. Andre sat in the dimly lit classroom, the hum of the fluorescent lights above the only sound filling the room. His eyes were focused on the desk in front of him, though his mind was miles away. The whispers, the rumors, the way his classmates now looked at him, it all felt suffocating. He had wanted to prove himself, to show Lisa that there was more to him than the mask he wore. But now, as the days dragged on, he realized that the truth of what he had done to gain her attention was far from simple. Lisa had become distant. The easy smile she once offered him was replaced with polite indifference. She no longer looked at him with curiosity, no longer seemed to care about the quiet, introspective student who once seemed so invisible. The rumors had taken their toll, and Andre couldn't shake the feeling that the gulf between them had widened beyond repair. Lisa had been the only reason he had pushed himself to reveal his hidden brilliance, to cast aside his carefully constructed facade. But now that the truth was out, he wondered, was it worth it? The more he thought about it, the more he was consumed by doubt. Had he only betrayed his own integrity for the sake of a fleeting dream? The very thing that had made him special, his ability to think differently, his intellect, was now a burden, one that had turned him into something he wasn't sure he could recognize. Was he a genius, or was he just a fool who played a game to get noticed? His feelings for Lisa had only become more complicated as the days passed. He could still remember the way her eyes had softened when she first spoke to him after the quiz. Competition, but now that look seemed like a distant memory. It wasn't just her rejection that stung. It was the realization that he had played with her feelings, pretending to be someone he wasn't, all to gain her attention. Had he miscalculated everything? Had his desperation to be seen, to be understood, clouded his judgment? Andre's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps. He looked up, and there she was, Lisa, standing by the door of the classroom. She hesitated, her gaze lingering on him for a moment before she slowly walked in, her expression unreadable. For a brief second, their eyes met, and Andre felt that familiar knot in his stomach. He had hoped that things might go back to normal, that the distance between them might close. But now, as he watched her approach, he knew that nothing would be the same again. "Hey," Lisa said, her voice soft but distant. "Can we talk?" Andre's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know whether to feel relieved or anxious. "Sure," he said, his voice a little too quiet. "What's on your mind?" Lisa stood in front of him, her posture tense. She didn't sit down. Instead, she looked at him, her expression conflicted, as though she was wrestling with something inside her. "I've been thinking about everything," she began, her eyes searching his face. "About you, about what happened with the quiz and, well, everything." She paused, as if unsure how to proceed. Andre swallowed hard, his own thoughts in turmoil. "I didn't mean for any of it to happen like this. I just wanted you to see me, to see who I really am." Lisa blinked, the words hitting her harder than she expected. She had always admired Andre's quiet intelligence, but it had always seemed like something distant, something she couldn't understand. Now, hearing him say those words, she realized that his actions had been driven by something much deeper than she had ever imagined. "I never thought I could connect with someone like you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone so smart. Someone who hides behind his genius. I thought I couldn't understand you, Andre, but now I don't know what to think." Andre's chest tightened at the vulnerability in her voice. His mind raced, desperate to find the right words. But the confusion inside him made it impossible to speak clearly. "Lisa, I didn't mean to deceive you. I didn't mean for it to be like this. I just didn't know any other way to get your attention." The words felt hollow as soon as they left his mouth. Was this really who he was? A person willing to manipulate the truth to win someone's affection? His heart ached as he realized just how far he had gone to be seen, to be recognized. Was this the price of wanting something so desperately? "I don't want to be someone I'm not," Andre said quietly, his voice breaking the silence between them. "But it feels like I've lost everything now. You see me differently, and I can't take that back." Lisa's expression softened, her own conflict clear in her eyes. "I don't know what to say, Andre. I want to understand." I really do. But the way you went about it, the lies, it's hard to just forget." Andre felt his heart drop. The truth of her words hit him harder than anything else. He had wanted to be loved, wanted to be seen for who he truly was. But in the process, he had built walls between them instead of breaking them down. He had never been honest with her, and now that the truth was out, it was too late. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Andre whispered. "But I had to tell you the truth. I had to stop hiding." For a moment, Lisa said nothing. She simply looked at him, her expression softening with sympathy, but the sadness in her eyes was unmistakable. She nodded slowly, her voice barely audible. "I know, but it's going to take time for me to understand." With that, she turned and walked out of the classroom, leaving Andre standing alone, the weight of his own choices pressing down on him. The distance between them had grown too large to bridge in a single moment, and in that silence, Andre knew that the dilemma of integrity would haunt him for a long time. The school hallways had never felt so suffocating. Andre's footsteps echoed in the silence as he walked, the weight of what he was about to do pressing heavily on his chest. The rumors, the deception, the quiet desperation to be seen, all of it had led to this moment. His mind raced, but his resolve was unwavering. He had to tell Lisa the truth. He couldn't live with the lie anymore. After days of avoiding each other, Andre had finally caught her alone by the lockers. Lisa was holding a stack of books, her eyes scanning the pages, her face a mixture of concentration and weariness. As soon as she noticed him, she froze. She didn't look angry. No, that wasn't the right word. She looked confused. "Lisa," Andre started, his voice cracking, betraying the anxiety that had taken root inside him. He took a breath, steadying himself. "I need to talk to you." She looked up at him, her brow furrowing. "I don't know if there's anything left to talk about, Andre, not after everything that's happened." The words stung more than he expected, but he didn't flinch. This was it. There was no turning back now. He had to be honest, completely honest. No more hiding. "I know, but I can't keep running from it," he said, stepping closer. "I'm not who you think I am, Lisa." Her expression softened, but she stayed silent, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "I'm not just another student in the back of the class, not just the guy who gets average grades," Andre continued, his words tumbling out faster than he had intended. "I've been hiding something that it's not easy to admit." Lisa stared at him, waiting for him to continue. Andre's hands trembled, but he pushed forward. "I have a 200 IQ, he finally said, his voice low but clear. "I've been hiding it. I pretended to be just like everyone else because I didn't want to stand out. I didn't want to be the weird genius. I didn't want people looking at me like I was different. But I was lying to myself. And I was lying to you." For a moment there was only silence. Andre could see Lisa's face change, her eyes flickering with disbelief, then something else, hurt, maybe even betrayal. He could almost hear the walls she had built between them, growing higher with each passing second. "Wait," Lisa said, shaking her head. "Are you telling me that everything you've done, the quiz, the things you said, was all just to impress me?" Andre's heart dropped. He had expected the question, but the sting of her words still cut deep. "Yes, but not just for you. For me, too. I wanted to prove that I could be more than what everyone else saw. But I messed up, Lisa. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to deceive you. I just didn't know any other way to get you to notice me. I thought, if I could show you how smart I am, maybe you'd see something worth liking." Lisa stepped back, her eyes wide with disbelief. "And you thought that was the way to get my attention, by lying to me, by pretending to be someone you're not?" Andre felt his chest tighten as her words sliced through him. He had always known this moment would come, but hearing her voice crack with disappointment made him want to collapse. "I didn't know what else to do," he whispered. "I didn't think you'd ever notice me if I wasn't special. But I've realized now that it's not about that. I've been hiding from myself, and I'm tired of it." Lisa's face softened, but the hurt in her eyes lingered. "You really thought I'd care about something like that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "About your IQ, about your intelligence. I care about you, Andre, not some number. But you hid yourself. You made me believe you were someone you're not." Andre hung his head, the weight of the truth sinking in. His mind screamed at him to explain, to say something to make her understand. But the silence between them was deafening. Finally, Lisa spoke again, her tone gentler this time. "You're more than just your intelligence, Andre. You don't need to hide who you are, but you also can't hide from the people around you. That's what matters. I can't trust someone who pretends to be something they're not." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He had worked so hard to build up this facade, to protect himself from rejection, but now it felt like everything was falling apart. "I'm sorry," Andre whispered again, the weight of his regret almost unbearable. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought if you saw the real me, maybe you'd think I was worth your time, but now I know that wasn't the way." For a long time Lisa stood there watching him. Then, to Andre's surprise, she took a step forward. "I'm not saying I can just forget what happened," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But what I am saying is that you have the courage to admit your mistakes. And that, Andre, that's something I respect. I don't care about your IQ, but I do care about who you are when you're not hiding." Andre lifted his head, meeting her gaze. "Do you think we can still be friends after everything?" Lisa nodded, a small, sincere smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I think we can try, but you have to promise me something." Andre raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. "Promise me you won't hide again. Not from me, not from anyone. I want to see the real you, all of you." A weight lifted off Andre's chest as he nodded. "I promise." As the tension between them began to ease, Andre felt something he hadn't in a long time. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new, a chance to build a real connection, free from the lies he had clung to for so long. Andre stood alone by the window, staring out at the quiet campus beyond, the weight of his own choices pressed down on him, the echoes of his actions reverberating in the hollow space of his mind. It had been days since he had confessed to Lisa, days since the moment that had torn down the walls he had so carefully built. The lies, the deceit, the desperation to be seen. He had sacrificed it all, only to lose her. Now, as he watched the students bustle about, he felt like an outsider once again, trapped in a world where he didn't belong. He had revealed his truth, but in doing so, he had shattered any hope of winning Lisa's heart. Lisa had been distant. Since the confession, her eyes no longer lingered on him with that faint warmth they once held. Every glance was now filled with uncertainty, a look that spoke of regret and disillusionment. Andre had seen it all, the hesitation, the withdrawal. She didn't trust him anymore. She didn't see him the way he wanted her to. She saw him as a liar, a fraud. "Maybe I deserve this," Andre whispered to himself, his voice a mere murmur. In the stillness of the room, he had wanted her to understand him, to see past the mask he wore. But now, with every passing moment, it seemed like his chances of winning her heart were slipping further away. He had been foolish to think that revealing the truth would bring them closer. It only pushed her further away. As he turned to leave the classroom, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a message from Marcus, his best friend, who had been his rock through all the turmoil. The message was simple, yet it struck a chord deep inside him. "Don't give up just yet. There's more to you than this. You know that, right?" Andre stared at the screen, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. He had no idea what to say, but the words Marcus had sent him hit harder than he expected. "There's more to you than this." The words replayed in his mind, echoing in the silence of the room. He had spent so long hiding who he truly was, trying to be someone else, someone who fit in. But Marcus was right. There was more to him than this, more than the king of failing grades, more than the quiet, invisible student who had spent so much time pretending to be ordinary. He had never allowed himself to embrace his true self, and maybe that was the real reason he had failed. He had been afraid of being seen, afraid of the vulnerability that came with revealing who he truly was. Suddenly, The door to the classroom swung open, and Andre's heart skipped a beat. It was Lisa. She stood there, hesitating for a moment, her gaze fixed on him. For a split second, Andre thought about turning away, about walking out the door and avoiding this confrontation. But something inside him stirred, something stronger than fear, stronger than the shame he felt. He couldn't keep running. "You wanted to talk?" Lisa asked, her voice soft but steady, though there was a hint of something else in it, something that made Andre's chest tighten with both hope and uncertainty. "Yeah," Andre said, his voice barely above a whisper. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest. The weight of what he was about to say felt heavier than anything he had ever carried. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. And I'm sorry. I've been pretending to be someone I'm not, and I thought that if I just showed you how smart I was, if I just proved myself, maybe I could make you notice me. But I realize now that it was all wrong. I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to hide." Lisa's gaze softened, but there was still a wariness in her eyes. "Andre, I don't know what to think. You lied to me. You lied to everyone." "I know," he said, his voice thick with regret. "I didn't know how else to get close to you. I didn't know how else to get anyone to see me. I thought being someone else would make it all easier. But it didn't. It just made everything worse." Lisa stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his face. "You never needed to lie, Andre. I don't care about how smart you are. I never did. What I cared about was you, the real you." Andre swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking into him. "But I never let you see that part of me. I thought it was easier to just blend in." "You can't live like that," Lisa said softly, shaking her head. "You can't hide who you really are. Not from me. Not from anyone." Andre felt a rush of emotions. Fear, shame, but something else too. Something that felt like hope. "I'm not perfect. I've spent my whole life hiding. But I'm done with that now. I don't want to keep pretending. I just want to be me. If you can accept that, maybe we can figure things out." For a long moment, Lisa stood there, her eyes searching his face. The silence between them felt heavy, but it was different now, less tense, more vulnerable. Andre could see the hesitation in her eyes, but there was something else too, something that made his heart race. Finally, Lisa stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think I can give you a chance, but you have to promise me something." Andre nodded eagerly. "Anything. Promise me you won't hide again. Promise me you'll always be honest. No more pretending." "I promise," Andre said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise I'll never hide from you again." For the first time in days, Andre felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He had been so consumed by his desire to be seen that he had forgotten what really mattered. It wasn't about impressing Lisa or anyone else. It was about being honest, being vulnerable, and letting people see him for who he truly was. Lisa gave him a small smile, a genuine one this time, and Andre felt his heart swell with something he hadn't felt in so long. Hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe, just maybe, the truth he had feared revealing all this time was the very thing that would set him free. As they walked together down the hallway, side by side, Andre realized that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was on the right path. His path, the one that didn't require masks or pretense, just honesty and a willingness to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The air in the auditorium was thick with tension, every breath Andre took feeling heavier than the last. The final round of the quiz competition was about to begin, and the stakes had never been higher. He was about to face off against the best students in the school, including his longtime rival Kyle, someone who had always known about Andre's hidden abilities, but had never once revealed them to the others. Andre could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This wasn't just another quiz. It was a test of his integrity, of who he truly was and what he had become. Sitting behind his competitors, Andre glanced around the room, his heart racing. Lisa was seated in the front row, her eyes focused on the stage. It had been days since their conversation, since he had finally confessed to her and shown her the real Andre. The Andre who wasn't just trying to impress her, but who had learned the hard way to stop hiding from himself. He had hoped she would see him differently, but now, as he watched her, he realized that the outcome of the competition wasn't what mattered. What mattered was how far he had come in embracing who he really was, not just for Lisa, but for himself. The competition began, the first few rounds feeling like a blur of questions and answers. Andre's mind was sharp, focused, but his gaze kept flicking to Lisa, who was watching with an intensity that only heightened his nervousness. Kyle, seated beside him, flashed Andre a knowing smirk. Andre could feel the weight of their unspoken history, the long years of competition, the jealousy, the rivalry. It was always there, simmering just beneath the surface, but this time it was different. Andre wasn't here to defeat Kyle or to prove anything to anyone. He was here for one reason, to prove to himself that he could face his fear, embrace his true self, and still walk away with his head held high. As the final question approached, Andre's heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the eyes of the room on him, the tension building with every passing second. His mind raced, but he stayed calm, focusing on the question, pushing aside the fear of failure that had haunted him for so long. He raised his hand, answering the question with a clear and precise response. The room went silent as the host confirmed his answer. It was correct. Andre had done it. But as the crowd erupted in applause, something shifted inside him. The victory wasn't what filled him with pride. It was the journey he had taken to get there, the moments of doubt, the struggle, the courage it took to show his true self. He had learned that the real test wasn't in the answers he gave, but in how he learned to accept who he was, flaws and all. Lisa's eyes met his as the applause died down. There was something different in her gaze now, a respect, an admiration. Not just for his intellect, but for his honesty, his vulnerability. Andre realized with a sense of clarity that the victory he had won wasn't just about the quiz. It was about the relationship he had started to build with Lisa, built on trust and authenticity. And in that moment, Andre knew that the real prize wasn't the trophy, but the person he had become, and the one person who now saw him for who he truly was. As Lisa smiled at him, Andre felt the weight of the last few weeks lift off his shoulders. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to hide. The soft glow of the setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink as Andre and Lisa stepped out of the competition hall, their footsteps in sync. The atmosphere around them was quiet, the buzz of the crowd from inside fading into the distance. For the first time in days, Andre felt a sense of peace settle in his chest. The tension he had carried with him for so long, the pressure to be someone he wasn't, had finally lifted, and in its place was something that felt real. Lisa walked beside him, her hand brushing against his as they walked down the long corridor toward the exit. She didn't say anything at first, but the subtle warmth of her touch spoke volumes. Andre stole a glance at her, his heart still racing from the competition, but now for a different reason. "You did it, Andre," Lisa said, her voice soft but full of sincerity. She turned her head to smile at him, her eyes sparkling with something more than just admiration. There was a newfound respect there, an understanding. "I knew you had it in you." Andre smiled back, but it was a smile that came with a deeper meaning now. "I didn't just do it for the competition. I did it for me. I had to stop pretending. I couldn't keep hiding behind this mask. I wanted to be seen for who I really am, not just for what I can do." Lisa nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I think that's the most important thing. That's what matters, Andre. Not the grades, not the trophies, not the applause. It's the truth. It's being honest with yourself and others." As they reached the door and stepped outside, Andre felt the cool evening air wash over them, but it was the warmth between them that kept him grounded. They had both come a long way from the nervous, uncertain students they once were. Andre had learned something invaluable, something that had eluded him for most of his life. "I've spent so long trying to impress people, trying to be something I'm not," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But now I realize it's not about that. It's about being real. It's about finding people who accept you for who you are, flaws and all. And I'm lucky to have found that with you. Lisa stopped walking for a moment, turning to face him. There was a softness in her gaze, a quiet understanding that made Andre's heart swell. I think you've always been that person, Andre. You just had to give yourself the chance to show it. I see you now, not the genius, not the guy trying to be someone else, just you. For a moment they stood there, looking at each other in the fading light. Andre realized that the journey to this point had been about more than just a quiz. Competition. It had been about discovering who he truly was, shedding the layers of pretense he had built over the years, and finally embracing the person he had been hiding from for so long. Do you think we can make this work? Andre asked, his voice tentative but hopeful. Lisa's smile grew wider as she reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. I think we already have, she said, her voice full of warmth and sincerity. True connections aren't built on intelligence or popularity. They're built on trust, honesty, and the willingness to be vulnerable. We've got all that. Andre's chest tightened, but in the best way possible. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like he was wearing a mask. He didn't feel the need to impress anyone. He felt free to be himself, free to love and be loved in return. And as they walked down the path together, hands clasped, Andre knew that this was just the beginning. Their journey together was only starting, but it was one that was grounded in truth, not in any false pretense. Lisa glanced at him one last time, her expression soft but filled with certainty. I'm proud of you, Andre, not just for what you did today, but for who you've become. Andre's heart swelled. Thank you, Lisa. I'm proud of us, for being honest, for being real. That's all that matters. And as they walked together into the sunset, Andre knew that no matter what lay ahead, the most important lesson he had learned was that love, true love, didn't come from impressing others. It came from being honest, vulnerable, and real.